Thank you for joining us now. Nigeria has experienced a decline in its oil production, largely to the rampant theft of petroleum products and pipeline vandalism, which have negatively impacted the oil revenue target of the federal government. The resulting loss of income has had far-reaching consequences, including reduced government revenues and diminishing foreign exchange earnings. However, the federal government and the House of Representatives are determined to reverse these trends by leveraging the expertise and resources of the Nigerian Navy to safeguard critical infrastructure and restore the country's rightful share of oil wealth. Well, to discuss these, I'm joined right now by the Head Research and Policy Advisory at Budget Nigeria, Mr. Hussein Iniobong. He joins me virtually now. Thank you so much, Mr. Hussein, for joining me. Talk to us about the current, revenue projection of the federal government in terms of oil revenue in the 2024 fiscal year. How well do you think the government is addressing this, and how well is the government getting close in terms of the projection it made?
I mean, very significant, and like you have mentioned, it doesn't only have implications for the revenue that accrues to the federal government and the other two tiers of government, but also for FX liquidity. So it's very important that at this point, a very critical point in time, that we're able to resolve all those legacy issues around oil theft. And mind you, oil theft, the value of oil theft, right, is significantly large. You would expect that the receipts from oil, as you know, makes up, about 70% of the total revenues of 16 states, and about 30 states rely on these federal transfers for 50% of their total revenues. So it's important that we clean house to be able to get as much receipt as we can from oil, resolve all these legacy issues, so that we begin to see the liquidity with regards to FX, and this more traded revenue can, form part of the revenue pool of government.
Speak to us about, there has to be some collaboration. If you look at, there's a collaboration currently between the House of Representatives and the Navy to expose theft and, of course, vandalism. How well do you think that collaboration will address the issue of oil theft and vandalism in Nigeria?
Well, at face value, it might seem like a lot is going on, but if you are going to treat oil theft as a transnational organized crime, you would agree with me that there are different agents, entities involved. There are oil companies, there are oil company representatives involved, the security agencies involved, there are politicians involved. But from what has happened with regards to trying to address the issue in time past, it doesn't look like there are very stringent measures are being taken to address this head-on. I do not know of any high-profile person that is currently being prosecuted for oil theft. We know that recently there have been very minor adjustments upward in terms of the volume of production, but there's still a lot to be desired with regards to, looking at the various areas where the theft, of course, whether it's the wellhead or the gathering station, with the pipelines, or with illegal ship-to-ship movements. And mind you, the ships that move these products across our borders, they're not small boats. They are ships that you should be able to track. There are locations where these products are moved to. And so there's still a lot more that government can do with regards to stemming this in the bud. And a lot of other countries have tried, they are currently trying different things to address this thing, because mind you, this is not something that is exclusive to Nigeria. The global value of oil theft is put at $133 billion yearly, which is responsible for about 5 to 7% of the market share of crude oil. So that tells you that it's not something that is happening in Nigeria alone, but other countries are taking measures to address this head-on, especially for countries that largely depend on proceeds from oil both for revenue and for FX liquidity. So there's a lot more that needs to be done with regards to consequence management. Enough of the setting up committees to look into these things. People need to be brought to account, to serve as deterrent for this.
The government is targeting about 19 trillion naira in terms of oil revenue for the 2024 fiscal year. How do you think they plan to achieve this, bearing in mind that the current oil price benchmark in the 2024 budget is pegged at $77.96, and so today OPEC is selling at $82. That's about $5 difference. So the question is, how possible do you think this target they will achieve? How do you think they intend to achieve this?
Well, we feel, when I say we at budget, and a couple of other analysts feel this is largely optimistic, especially if you benchmark it against what we've been able to achieve in the past. We've not done, up to 9 trillion ever. And so projecting to more than double previous year's revenue, looking at all the challenges on the fiscal side, the economy is not one that we think we will be able to achieve. Also, looking at the whole subsidy arrangement at the moment, there have been inclinations that subsidy has in a way returned. It's important that government comes, it's upfront with how they have been able to maintain prices at that level for more than 3 to 4 months, because we know that having removed subsidy and floated the exchange rates, the price of PMS is supposed to be responsive to both the global price of crude and the exchange rates. But it seems that there's that disconnect between the price of PMS and what currently obtains in the FX market. So government needs to come out clean on how exactly we are maintaining these prices. The suspicion is that some proceeds also from oil receipts has been used to maintain prices. So, but until we see that transparency around how we've been able to keep PMS prices stable, it will give us an idea of what exactly it is we've been able to save in quotes from subsidy removal. Until we're able to see that, there's not much in terms of projections upwards that I think we'll be able to do. We need to see the numbers, like I said, for December, for January, to see if those gains, have been made or if they have been utilized to maintain prices as we are suspecting.
You spoke earlier of things that we need to do to ramp up production and to increase oil revenue. Would you want to touch on those things that you think the government needs to put in place, to address shortage in the oil revenue?
Oh, definitely. It's technology. Even if the grade of crude we produce has its own fingerprint, but with different blends, mixing of different blends of crude, it's easy to lose that. But I know that some countries are experimenting using designer traders and markers for their crude oil to be able to know the place of origin, so that regardless of where oil is produced, you know exactly where that oil is coming from, whether it's been legitimately sold or it's a legal product. Now, some other countries are using, fiber optic sensors, pipelines, drone surveillance, pressure drop control flow stations to know exactly when there's a drop in pressure, when pipelines have been vandalized. And this helps with, early warning detection and can also minimize theft. We cannot emphasize the fact that we need to improve on our metering technology. That's far and few between as it is, to know exactly at each point what it is we are producing, at the point of also movement, maybe to the export terminals, what has moved to that point. Then there has to be a lot around data analytics, satellite imaging, and we need to check, regulate the use of cryptocurrencies, strictly, because a lot of these transactions, whether it's with illegal oil sales or with the trade of drugs or with terrorism. A lot of those transactions are happening using cryptocurrency services. So there needs to be a lot more monitoring around transactions using cryptocurrencies within our borders to know exactly what is happening, to be able to forestall crime. Then lastly, a lot needs to happen, like I had said earlier, around consequence management. People need to be, brought to book, regardless of whose ox is God, regardless of how highly they place in society. There have been allegations against some military personnel. We are looking to see how far they go with investigations and persons who will be brought to book to serve as deterrents. Until all this, is done, there's not much that we would be able to achieve with regards to ramping up production.
Well, give us your outlook for Nigeria's oil revenue in 2024, given the current challenges. The government, of course, emphasizes on fiscal responsibility and all of that. So perhaps we need to look at what exactly, how exactly, and when, in terms of timeline now, how do you think the government can go about it, to ramp up and meet up this target? Because it looks like there's so much pressure on expenditure right now.
Now, so it's not just oil theft that has contributed to the drop in production. There have been issues around alien assets. We've not had a lot of investment, come into that sector in a very long time. At first, it was around the regulatory regime, but we have thought that with enacting the petroleum industry bill, and providing some form of guidance as to how that sector would that investments come in. But like there are so many other factors that affect investment. If you look at the ease of doing business as a composite index, if you look at what's happening around the volatility of of our currency with regards to the dollar, if you are looking at some semblance of capital control that it seems the central bank is trying to introduce, to forestall this volatility. These are things that investors would look at and decide whether Nigeria is a viable location or investment location for their capital. And until we're able to, address a lot of these issues, even if we curb oil theft, there's still largely untapped potential, that we've not been able to take advantage of. And mind you, this is very limited window we have, looking at energy transition and the period that countries have to transit from fossil fuel to more renewable sources of energy. Time is really not on our side to make the maximum gains from this industry, until it folds up and we're looking at more renewable sources of energy. So in terms of projections for that sector, I do not see much that has changed, from the past with regards to some of those legacy issues that I had mentioned. And until we begin to see very, very concrete structural changes in this regard, there's not much that I expect to change, apart from maybe the gains resulting from, the floating of the exchange rates. But in terms of, actual gains from some of those structural reforms, there's not much I'm seeing with what is on ground that would change.
Okay. I think we'll just have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Head Research and Policy Advisory, Budget Nigeria, Mr. Hussein Iniobong. Thank you. We appreciate you for coming on Business Nigeria.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's move